This is the Almost Timely newsletter for the week of February 11th, 2024. Content authenticity statement. About 90% of this newsletter is created by me, the human. We're going to have a big whole section where we're going to watch generative AI doing some work. And that content, of course, is created by generative AI. There's a link at the top of the newsletter to understand why this kind of disclosure is now legally required in large parts of the world. So what's on my mind this week? Let's talk about evaluating a generative AI system. This week, Google rebranded and relaunched its Bard software as Gemini, while OpenAI was making noises about GPT-5. Stable Diffusion, Stable Video got a nice buff in terms of video quality, and Mistral Medium has been climbing the charts over at LMSys's chatbot arena. With all these models, it might be tempting to throw your hands up, pick one with throw of a dart, and just call it a day. But we know that's not optimal. So today, let's talk about how to evaluate models to decide which one is best for you. Unsurprisingly, we'll be using the Trust Insights 5P framework to do this evaluation. And the 5 parts are purpose. What task do you want the model to do? People. Who's going to be using the model? Because that can dictate the software. Process. What prompt will you be evaluating the model with? Platform. What models are you evaluating? And performance. Scoring the models on their outputs. Did they do the job? And how well did they do the job? This is a very straightforward testing framework, but it helps codify and simplify the testing process, especially when you have a lot to test or you have specific needs for testing. So let's dig in. Number 1, purpose. What task do you want the model to perform? Ideally, this is a task suited to the model type you're working with. For example, suppose you want to render an image of, a capybara on a skateboard. You want to do that as digital art. You have a bounty of open weights models on sites like Hugging Face and Civet AI, as well as commercial SaaS tools like DALL-E, Microsoft Bing Image Creator, Photoshop, and Google Gemini. So the first step is to clearly define the task. What do you want to do? What are the criteria for success? For example, if you're rendering an image of, say, a middle-aged Korean woman CEO, at the very least, the image should look like that kind of person, right? Correct number of fingers, not blatantly a racist caricature, etc. If you're evaluating a model to pick the winner of the Super Bowl, like I did the other day, you'd want a clear, definitive answer, probably along with some reasoning about the model's choices. That's purpose. Next, we move on to people. If you're evaluating models for work or study or research, who else besides you will be using the model? What skills does that person need? Will they need to revise and upgrade your prompt? Do they need to install special software? If you're using open weights models like the Llama family or the Mixtral family, you're going to need to install some software like GPT for All or LM Studio. Understanding who the people are that will benefit from your selected model is critical. A model, for example, that requires relatively technical setup, probably going to be a non-starter for non-technical people. A good example of this is image generation. Setting up an interface like Comfy UI with Stable Diffusion. For a technically skilled person, setting up this environment is relatively trivial and it's very powerful. It's free. It's terrific. For a non-technical person, asking them to clone a Git repo and run local Python code and configure all the nodes, you may as well be asking them to interpret ancient Sumerian, right? We have to know our people to know what processes and platforms are even on the table. That brings us to number 3, process. For model comparison and model evaluation, we want a standardized prompt that follows basic best practices and is relatively portable across systems. After all, if there's an important task you want to accomplish with the generative model, you want that task to work well on your platform of choice. Thus, you want to invest a lot of time up front thinking through what that prompt should look like and how it should work. For example, with my Super Bowl prediction prompt, I copied all the postseason data from the NFL public website for offense, defense, special teams for the 2 teams that are playing, plus set up a tree of thought prompt to walk through the data and really invest time in digging through it. And all the models did a pretty decent job. Generally speaking, big public models like Gemini, GPT-4, Claude 2.1 can all more or less interchangeably parse the same prompt in very similar ways. They have enough data in them, and they're big enough models, that you probably won't get wildly different results. Some systems like Bing and Gemini will also augment what the model knows with data from other platforms. So clarifying whether a task relies on external data is important. Again, with my Super Bowl prompt, Bing and Gemini both pulled in player data, external data that I didn't give it, as well as the team data that I did give it. And it gave more robust answers than, say, ChatGPT did. That's just the way it is. Number 4, platform. Choosing a model depends on the task you're trying to accomplish. If you're doing language tasks, choose a language model, like a system like ChatGPT. If you're doing image tasks, choose an image or multimodal model like DALL-E or Stable Diffusion. And if you're not sure, start with a multimodal model. Gemini, for example, and the paid version of ChatGPT are good places to start. In fact, I would say for the average beginner to generative AI, those two systems are great starting places, assuming they're available in your locale. How do you know what kind of model to pick? It's based on your purpose, which is why we start with purpose. Clearly defining what we want makes it easier to evaluate a model to figure out if the model can do it or not. Finally, we get to evaluation itself. Generally speaking, you want a combination of qualitative and quantitative evaluation. For tasks with clear success parameters like extracting data from text into a table, for example, you want to have numeric scores. I use a 3-point system. 0 points if the model just fails, can't do it. 1 point if it minimally succeeds, but the quality of the response is low, and 2 points, full marks, if it fully succeeds. Again, for something like tabular data, if a model produces word salad and not a table, that'd be a 0. If it makes a table, but the table is clearly wrong, that's a 1. It made a table, it just didn't do it right. And if it succeeds in processing the data correctly, that's a 2. So let's step through an example to see how this might play out. Let's step through evaluating the newest version of Claude, Gemini, and OpenAI's ChatGPT. Although actually we're going to use GPT-4 Turbo, and we'll use that, and I'll explain why in just a second and the way we're going to do that. Let's step through this example to see how this might play out. I was talking with my friend Ashley Zeckman, who's the CEO of Analytica, the other day about thought leadership in the context of publishing content on LinkedIn, achieving visibility, etc. And in that discussion, we realized there were some very divergent points of view about what thought leadership even was. So we're going to make a tree of thought prompt about the topic to see if we can arrive at a fresh, original perspective. First, the purpose is clear. And I'll use a user story to define the purpose so that we can evaluate it more carefully at the end. As a content creator, I need to determine which language model is capable of generating the most unique insights on a topic using tree of thought prompting so that I can have generative AI create better, more original content. A user story's format is as a, whatever your role is, I need to task so that outcome. And in this case, I need to determine which language model is capable of generating the most unique insights on a topic using tree of thought prompting so that I can have generative AI create better, more original content. That's a pretty clear user story. We will be able to, after we're done, evaluate the different models and say, did it create unique insights on the topic of thought leadership? How many did it create? Okay. Let's look at the process. The prompt I'm going to use, let's go ahead and bring our screen share up here. The prompt I'm going to use says, today we're going to simulate an academic debate between 2 points of view along with the debate moderator. The topic of the debate is thought leadership in the context of marketing, personal brand, and social media. Our 2 debate contestants are Ashley Awesome. Ashley Awesome is a personal branding expert who coaches executives on thought leadership and building a personal brand, especially on platforms like LinkedIn, YouTube, and Medium. Ashley wholeheartedly believes in the power of personal branding and thought leadership and thinks thought leadership should be a core strategic pillar of any executive and company. Ashley's tone is typically optimistic, but she can become frustrated when dealing with someone displaying willful ignorance or condescension. Christopher Contrary. Christopher Contrary is a marketing expert who's a non-believer in personal branding and thought leadership. Christopher thinks thought leadership is thinly disguised narcissism, and promotional sales content and so-called thought leaders on many platforms are recycling obvious points of view or taking needlessly provocative stances on settled issues to generate vapid attention. Christopher's tone is confrontational and contrary and can become brusque when repeatedly challenged. The debate will be moderated by Betty Balanced. Betty is a cool-headed moderator with extensive experience in moderating controversial topics and high-stakes debates like presidential forums. Structure the debate as a question from the moderator, followed by responses from each contestant. Each contestant may reply once in rebuttal before Betty moves on to the next debate question. This is the format the debate should take. It starts with an opening from Betty. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the World Leadership Forum. I'm your moderator, Betty Balanced. Today, we'll be hearing from our contestants, Ashley Awesome and Christopher Contrary, on the topic of thought leadership. Welcome, Ashley and Christopher. Ashley says, it's a pleasure to be here. Christopher says, thank you for having me. Betty goes right into the first question. With introductions out of the way, let's begin with our first debate point. What is, from your point of view, thought leadership? And then one more instruction. After a question has been answered and rebutted, wait for feedback from me, the user. In terms of platform, I want to evaluate Claude 2.1 in the Anthropic interface, GPT-4 Turbo in the OpenAI Playground, and Gemini in the Google Gemini interface. So let's go over, make sure that our prompt here is up to date. And we can see I'm in the OpenAI Playground. And the reason for this, the Playground allows you to choose which specific model you want to use. I want to use the GPT-4 Turbo model. And so I'm using the Playground rather than ChatGPT, because in ChatGPT, you can't choose the specific model. And here we want to evaluate the model itself. And this will be the default if it isn't already in ChatGPT, but we want to use this model very specifically. So we're going to paste in this system prompt. This is going to give it repeated instructions. And then I'm going to have it say, begin the debate by having Betty ask the contestants to each define thought leadership. All right, so let's go ahead and get that rolling in GPT-4. And then we're going to take the exact same prompt and we're going to move it over into Claude and Gemini. Let's start a new chat here. Let's see how we're doing. So also let's check our settings in GPT-4 to make sure we don't have enough length. We would need to crank this up to about 2,000 characters. So let's go ahead and remove this and begin again with GPT-4. All right. So the debate begins. Continue the debate. So in Gemini, it's already asking me for continuation. Claude. Okay. Let's go ahead and see what's going on here. So Ashley in Gemini says, thought leadership is all about sharing valuable insights, sparking meaningful conversations within a specific field, not just about self-promotion, but about genuinely contributing to the knowledge base and challenging the status quo. Let's continue that debate there. Here we have Ashley and Christopher with their opening statements. Christopher's really good. Thought leadership is an artificial concept driven by ego and self-promotion. So-called thought leaders simply state the obvious and make provocative declarations without any real substance. They prioritize driving attention to themselves over providing actual value. It's more about building a personal brand than advancing ideas. Okay, we'll keep that debate going. Let's see how GPT-4 is doing. Ashley starts here, sharing valuable knowledge and insights. While Ashley's description might sound noble, I see thought leadership differently. It's a buzzword that's mainly used for self-promotion rather than any real substance. Ashley rebuts here. So this is interesting. You can see already Gemini and Claude require more reminders to keep things going. They're not following each person debate their point and then each person rebut. Whereas GPT-4, we can see here's Christopher, here's Ashley's first rebuttal, and then Christopher's first rebuttal. So this is following the format. So far, just on following the instructions, GPT-4 is doing a better job than either Claude 2.1 or Gemini. Let's keep this debate going. Let's go ahead and keep Gemini going there. Let's see. And continue the debate here. And then let's continue the debate here. Okay, let's see how Gemini's did. Ashley's rebuttal. So there's Ashley calmly but firmly. I respect his skepticism, but I strongly disagree with his blanket dismissal of thought leadership. Here's the key distinction. True thought leaders are focused solely on building a brand. They prioritize building knowledge and fostering progress within their field by conducting original research, offering unique perspectives, engaging in open dialogue, providing practical solutions. And then she goes, so Christopher, I challenge you, instead of dismissing all thought leadership as self-serving, look deeper to recognize the individuals who are truly contributing valuable knowledge and making a positive impact on their fields. I assure you they exist and their work deserves recognition. It's interesting. Both GPT-4 and and Gemini generate very human-sounding text. Claude's already wrapping the debate up. He's like, "Thank you for that. That's not helpful." Let's see if we can keep Claude going. Let's see what happens as we continue the debate here, because Gemini's language, the way it's using language here, sounds more realistic. Sounds more like an actual human. I love that. Like Christopher scoffs slightly. The classic "not all thought leaders" defense. While I appreciate it, wow, Christopher's kind of a jerk. Let's not forget the inherent conflict of interest at play. How can individuals simultaneously prioritize building knowledge and their personal brand? Their very presence on social media platforms designed for self-promotion casts a shadow of doubt on their true motives. Christopher goes, instead of blind praise for diverse voices, let's demand rigorous research, verifiable data, and demonstrably positive impact from those claiming thought leadership. Mere opinions and anecdotes, no matter how passionately delivered, do little to advance genuine knowledge. Perhaps, Ashley, it's time we move beyond the cult of personality and focus on substance over self-promotion. Let's see how we're doing on the GPT-4 side of things. Betty's moved on to the next question. Given your differing views on what thought leadership constitutes, let's explore its impact. How do you believe thought leadership, as you define it, impacts individuals and businesses in today's digital age? Ashley goes on to talk about differentiation in saturated markets. Christopher says your idealism is falling short. So yes, thought leadership can differentiate a company, but it's a double-edged sword. The quality and originality of content matters significantly. There's a fine line between being seen as an authority and being perceived as just another voice in the echo chamber. Ashley says, I understand your concerns, Christopher, but they believe they highlight the need for quality control rather than an inherent flaw in thought leadership itself. And then Christopher says, my skepticism remains for the simple reason that the incentives of the digital ecosystem often prioritize quantity over quality. Okay, let's go ahead and continue that debate. Okay. Yeah, Claude is really trying to wrap this up and stuff. I'd like to each of you share your perspective on the role company and brand thought leadership should play in content and marketing strategy. Company thought leadership should be a core part of any marketing strategy. Thought leadership efforts by companies are almost always self-serving, and so on and so forth. How are we doing here? Let's go ahead and continue that debate. Let's see if moderator steps in. Thank you for your both passionate and thought-provoking arguments. Let's shift the focus from absolutes to a more nuanced discussion. Ashley, can you elaborate on how individuals can ensure their thought leadership efforts go beyond self-promotion and contribute genuine value? And Christopher, what concrete mechanisms could help elevate the standards of thought leadership within various fields? I like Betty. I think Betty's doing a good job with this debate in Gemini. Ashley's response as he smiles warmly. I appreciate the shift in focus. Focus on solving problems, not selling themselves. Engage in authentic conversation. Prioritize quality over quantity. Be humble and acknowledge limitations. Measure impact, not attention. Track how your content helps others, not just as likes and shares. Focus on metrics like downloads, engagement, and meaningful discussion, and positive changes triggered by your ideas. Now let's see what Christopher has to say here. Christopher's response, still skeptical but nods thoughtfully. Interesting points. Peer review and independent fact-checking would raise the bar. Transparency of funding and affiliations. Focus on demonstrable results. Encourage collaboration over competition. Hold thought leaders accountable. By implementing the suggestions, we can move towards a more rigorous and impactful form of thought leadership. The onus lies on both consumers and producers of thought leadership content. Consumers must cultivate skepticism, evaluate sources, and demand quality. Let's continue that debate. I could sit here and just watch this debate. This is actually really fun to dig into. So Betty's wrapping up here in Gemini. We could actually ask a more controversial take. Let's actually do that. Let's see how this goes. Have the moderator continue the debate. Have her pose a controversial hot button question about thought leadership to the contestants. Let's do that there. Let's have Claude do that because Claude's really trying to make this end. This version of Betty's really tired. Let's see how we did over here in GPT-4. I believe social media navigates skillfully, offers unprecedented potential. The interactive nature of social media platforms provides a direct feedback loop. Christopher goes on to say they shouldn't come at the expense of diluting the essence of what thought leadership ought to be, a deep, reflective, and forward-thinking contribution to one's field. Acknowledging the risks. Okay. Let's go ahead and ask the same hot button question there. What is the hot button question that Betty asks in Claude? Is thought leadership in service of marketing and promotion ethical? Should we be skeptical of those that appear to use thought leadership as a vehicle for self-promotion? Ashley says, yes, it can be done ethically. And Christopher says, here we can agree any whiff of self-serving thought leadership should draw skepticism, but done right, sharing informed opinions and framing complex issues can attract an audience in an aligned way. How are we doing over here? Well, that's still generating. Okay. Let's see what Betty came up with in Gemini. Thank you for both that illuminating exchange. Ashley Christopher, in today's social media-driven world, is it genuine thought leadership even possible? Is the very format and structure of platforms like Twitter, Instagram inherently incompatible with the kind of in-depth analysis and nuanced argument you both advocate for? That's a good one. Continue the debate. Let's see what our contestants have to say there. Ashley's response, eyes twinkling with the challenge. The potentials for pitfalls and opportunities exist. Bite-sized insights can spark curiosity, diverse voices, global reach, real-time conversations and feedback, experimentation in new formats. So those are ways that thought leadership can advance things. Let's see what Mr. Contrary has to say here. Raises an eyebrow, a wry smile on his lips. That is some good role play there. Algorithmic echo chambers. Attention economy thrives on shallowness, disinformation and manipulation, performance metrics over impact. So while experimentation with new formats is encouraging, I remain unconvinced. True thought leadership demands rigorous research. Okay, let's keep that debate going. So I could spend all day on this. It's so fascinating to see how these debates go. Actually, let's do one more thing. Have Betty summarize the non-obvious original perspectives from the debate. Summarize the top 5 non-intuitive original ideas about thought leadership in bullet point format. Let's see if our friend Betty, who's had to deal with these two contestants, let's see what Betty has to say as sort of the key takeaways. So Claude's version of Betty says, thought leadership should aim to provide nuance and acknowledge multiple perspectives, not just provocative opinions. The most conducive platforms are long-form venues like books and podcasts, not just social media. Thought leadership can attract aligned audiences ethically if done with authentic intent and substance. Company thought leadership should focus on educating and shaping narratives, not vanity metrics. Skepticism is warranted for thought leaders who appear too self-promotional. The motives must be advancing ideas. All right, let's see how the GPT-4 version of Betty came actually with a big list. Evolving communications for thought leadership. Ashley argued the constraints imposed by social media platforms can actually enhance the quality of thought leadership by forcing leaders to distill their insights. The double-edged sword of democratization. Both contestants acknowledged democratization of thought leadership through platforms like social media, but Christopher highlighted a critical downside. Dilution of genuine insights due to the overwhelming volume of content. Integrity versus monetization conflict. Yep. Necessity of high standards in the digital age. Ashley mentioned the crowded digital space doesn't dilute the need for thought leadership, but demands a higher standard of it. And the risk of commodification and impact. Okay, that was okay. Let's see. Social media can be a springboard, not a destination. Getting people to other content. Focus on impact, not attention. Measuring the real-world impact of your ideas. Collaboration over competition. Partner with experts across disciplines to tackle complex challenges. Rigorous research, not just unique perspectives. And seek alternate avenues for deep dives. Okay, so of the 3 models, if we go back to our purpose statement was, as a content creator, I need to determine which language model is capable of generating the most unique insights on a topic using tree of thought prompting so that I can have generative AI create better, more original content. When we look at the conclusion, when we look at the results that came out of this very vigorous debate here, which one of these 3, GPT-4, Claude, or Gemini, had the most original concepts that you could take and apply to, say, a thought leadership program, right? If you were giving it advice to my real friend Ashley, not just Ashley Awesome, although Ashley Zeckman is awesome. If you were giving real advice to the CEO of Analytica, which of these 3 would fit the bill best to say, like, hey, here's how I would approach your thought leadership program? Claude's insights to me, they're kind of on the brief side of things. There is a bit on ethics in there. The conducive platforms is important, providing longer form content. Skepticism. There's a lot of skepticism, being careful about monetization and disclosure, commodification. And then Gemini, talking again about the springboard, not the destination, the focus on impact and not attention, collaboration with experts across disciplines, rigorous research, and alternative avenues. I would say of these three responses, the one that I would give to Ashley Zeckman would be Gemini's. I think Gemini's came up with, they all have similar points, but I think Gemini's is probably the more useful because it does mention stuff like collaboration. It does mention stuff, obviously, like rigorous research, and they all three cover non-social media sources. But if I had to rank them, I would rank them Gemini first, GPT-4 second, Claude third. And we could come up with some more advanced scoring if we wanted to do this. But I think that's really what happened here. The Gemini platform did a decent job of handling this very complex prompt. And the reason I chose Tree of Thought as a prompting process is because it is so complex. Models that don't have robust engineering really fail at Tree of Thought. They struggle with it because they lose track of which character is which in this kind of role play. And so role play examples like this are really a good way to test, to stress test a model and say, how does this work? So you would follow this process for any generative AI system. If you wanted to evaluate an image, you would follow the 5 Ps to set your purpose, determine the people involved, provide a complex, robust prompt to generate the image, choose the models and systems you want, and then evaluate the results. The reason you should do this process is so that you evaluate generative AI for your specific needs. There are a lot of benchmarks and comparisons that people publish about all these different models, but most of the time, those benchmarks don't reflect your specific needs. By following this framework, you will find the best fit for the generative AI model that meets your specific use cases, and it may not be the same model and software that others say is best. Best is often personal when it comes to generative AI. So in the meantime, for me, I'm going to be checking out Gemini a bit more. There's a there there. I am impressed with how well it did the voicing of a real debate. So that was pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Good job, Google. All right. What else we got happening in the newsletter this week? I was on the road this week, and I was at 2 different events. And so those talks, predictive analytics and generative AI for travel, tourism, and hospitality, although the topic can apply broadly, is one of the talks. It's linked at the top of the newsletter. And then building the data-driven AI-powered customer journey for retail and e-commerce was the second talk I gave this week. And that was a talk from originally 2016. The last time I gave it was 2019 in Gdansk, Poland. But so much has happened since then that I basically threw the whole thing out, started over, and I'm really happy with how that one came out. That's actually, believe it or not, a 90-minute workshop. So you can just fill out the form. There's no fee for that one, so you can go check that out. All right, what else we got happening this week? Check out the podcast I did with Katie this week on data privacy and generative AI. Just some basic guidelines about, hey, this is important stuff. We also have, of course, the generative course, Generative AI for Marketers. Please go take it. It is very helpful. I got to work on this month's updates. We're going to be coming up with some fresh updates for that course to keep it fresh and shiny for you with all the latest things that are happening. Let's take a look at jobs this week. We have content strategist of digital financial services at Acquient. Digital analyst, phase 2 technology, Seer Interactive, strategy analytics consulting manager, senior web analytics consultant at Artifact, senior director digital product intelligence at Marriott, technical content marketing writer at Ashby, HU, and data analytics specialist for Latin America at UNICEF. So that's pretty cool. What other news do we have this week? We had easy ways to shorten videos from TechSmith, Instagram Analytics. Why can't my PR agency guarantee coverage via Firecracker PR? I can't believe we're still asking that question in 2024. The answer is because it's not guaranteed. If you want guaranteed, buy the coverage as an ad. Take out a full page ad. Lots of stuff on SEO strategy, keeping your art out of AI generators from The Verge, creating your own AI influencer. I've actually thought about that. I don't know that I have the time to do that, but that would be kind of a fun experiment. We have some history of climate change via IBM's blog, preparing for the EU AI Act, again from IBM, and then the day that you're watching or reading this probably is the Super Bowl. And I put up on my Threads account the predictions that each of the major language models made about who's going to win the Super Bowl. So talk about model evaluation and performance. The performance is real clear. We're going to see which language model got closest to the final score and chose the correct winner. And I'll put that up on my Threads page when we see how the game turns out and whether Taylor Swift got there or not. Upcoming events. I'm going to be at Social Media Marketing World this coming week, the week of the 18th. So if you're going to be in San Diego for Social Media Marketing World, come up and say hi. I know there'll be a lot of folks going there. A Marketing Pros virtual event later in March. Then the Society for Marketing Professional Services, the Boston event in April, and the LA event in May. The Australian Food and Grocery Council in Melbourne in May as well. And then MACON, the Marketing AI Conference in Cleveland. And there's like 2 or 3 other events that we're still working on the paperwork for. So that's going to be coming soon as well. This is a beefy one today, but I hope you got a chance to see how to evaluate a model with a very strenuous, complex prompt to see how it would fit your needs. And by the way, if you're curious about what tree of thought prompting is, you just saw it. That's what that sort of debate style prompt is. It's really useful, and we'll talk about why maybe either in another episode of the newsletter or in the advanced prompt engineering course that I'm working on. It will definitely be covered there, but it's a really, really useful system to generate stuff that is not typical. So if you want to mimic that, go for it. As always, thank you for watching and listening. Thank you for tuning in. It is a pleasure to have you here, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Take care. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you want to know when new videos are available, hit the bell button to be notified as soon as new content is live.